How can TTRPGs transform family dynamics and education? Welcome to Gaining Advantage. Welcome to Gaining Advantage. We are using tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons to help you make lives better. First of all, if you happen to be watching this within the first few days, first week of release, we are going to be at Gamehole Con. We will be there on Friday. We'll be out on the show floor for most of the time, just going around meeting people and checking out the vendors and things like that. If you are going to be there, please find us. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know what I look like. And I will be there with my wife, and we'll be checking stuff out. And we would love to meet you. Stop us, introduce yourself, and let us know how you found us and or how you came to know about our work. Love to meet you. Want to let you know that we are releasing free weekly encounters for our upcoming Kickstarter Limitless Champions adventures. We're releasing new encounters that you can plug into those adventures once you have it, but they're also ones that you can use for other adventures as well. So even if the Kickstarter isn't something that interests you, you can still pick them up. Best way to get them, you can go to our website, warmickpublishing.com, and find them. But if you want a reminder to grab them each week, then you can join the Horde. That's our weekly email updates. And you can find that sign-up form on any page on our website. If you miss some of them, you can go sign up for our Patreon. There's a free 7-day trial. You can go grab the ones that you missed. And if you can't afford to keep supporting us that way, you can just cancel your membership right there and still get them that way. We also want to let you know that if you were a part of the Disabled Dungeons community on Reddit, that was shut down because of the decisions that Reddit made about third-party apps and just the impact that has on accessibility. And so we have set up a Disabled Dungeons community on the TTRPG network on Lemmy. And you can go to our website or check the show notes for information about that. Now, we have heard some people are having trouble with the CAPTCHAs on there. I have talked to the admin for that server, and hopefully they're getting that fixed. So try it out. If you have trouble with that, let me know, and so that I can work with them and try and get that resolved. And one more thing, those weekly adventures, because we are going to be going to Gamehole Con next week, we're going to be busy with that, and consequently, I will not have time to release one of those adventures next week. So the one that we're putting out this week will be up there for 2 weeks. But still, if you want to catch them, make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of them, because they will only be up there, each one, usually for a week. And so now let's get on with our interview. In a world filled with imaginative potential, finding the right tools to nurture young minds is a quest in itself. Today, we welcome Steph, the visionary force behind TTRPGKids, an Emmy award-winning platform with over 300 articles, 50 all-ages-friendly TTRPG titles under their belt. Steph is not only a prolific creator, but a steadfast supporter of families, educators, and creators in the kid-friendly TTRPG space. So I invite you now to discover the secrets to unlocking boundless creativity in the next generation as we delve into Steph's journey with TTRPGKids. Welcome, Steph.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So what would you like us to know about you personally, specifically speaking to the tabletop role-playing game crowd?
Mm-hmm. So I run the TTRPGKids website, and my intention is that it is a resource for families, teachers, and indie creators to be able to find everything in one spot. when it comes to tabletop RPGs for kids. So there's a lot of information that's out there scattered across the internet. And it takes a little bit of time to find some of it sometimes. So my intention is that it's one easy spot, and I hope that it can help with facilitating that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because parents have tons of extra time, for looking around and scouring the entire internet.
Yeah. Hours and hours you can just spend searching around. So
cool. So tell us more about TTRPG Kids.
Yeah. So TTRPG Kids is a website that there's tips and tricks for how to run tabletop RPGs with really young kids. There's a whole section on education. Like I use tabletop RPG elements in the college class that I teach. So there's how I integrate it into the classroom and how you can use some of those steps to integrate into your own classrooms. There's resources getting into therapeutic benefits where I've interviewed all kinds of experts in the field about how they use tabletop RPGs in therapy and to see some kind of benefit from those who are playing. There's reviews and features on all kinds of indie games. So it is meant to have everything there and to give you all the support that you need for playing tabletop RPGs with young kids, tweens, teens, young adults, and to be able to use them for fun, but then also to be able to apply them. So they're helping give like extra educational benefits, helping with creating friend groups, developing social skills, and so on. So
awesome. That's so great. There's a handful of resources out there for other forms of media. Like when we're going to watch a movie with our kids, we check out Common Sense Media and see what people are saying there about movies or video games and stuff like that. But yeah, there's really not much in the way of for tabletop games, and especially when it comes to like indie games and that, you can get all kinds of information about D&D 5th edition and some of the bigger kinds of things. But this is this game on itch or something that, and it's like, oh well, what's that about? That sounds like something my kids would enjoy, but
what do you know about it? So
right.
The reviews and the features really help both those who are looking for games, because they get that background of, like, I do an actual play with my kid and then I break down, like, I'm an engineer by trade, so I break it down like in a report of like, these are the mechanics, this is how kid friendly it is, these are elements to look out for, this is how we modify the game, and so on. So that really helps for like families and teachers, librarians, and like babysitters, and like everyone in kind of that realm. But then it also really helps the indie creators, because now there's an article out there about their game, sharing it with others. And some of these projects, like, they're great games, but because they don't have like the same budget as a big publisher, or because they can't like do a physical print yet, they're not getting the recognition that game deserves or that they deserve for their work. So it gives a spot for them to have something about their game for others to find. And there's a lot of creators that I've seen have actually kind of gotten the review, gotten that as like a head start, and then continued on and started doing like physical publishing and things like that, because it's given them a little bit more recognition. So it helps kind of like both sides of the coin there. So
yeah, definitely. Marketing is expensive. And, as much as marketing is such a negative word in a lot of people's minds, it's really just getting the word out. It's letting people know. I find so often with my own work where people say, oh, I didn't know this existed. I wish I'd known about this sooner. It's like, well, I'm doing my best, but it's a big world, and so getting things out to everywhere, and there's so many different games out there and stuff. Just trying to find those things. No, that's awesome, and I love that that you're play testing it with a kid.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so important, because I know there's just playing with my own kids. Um, their approach to things, they do things that I wouldn't expect. They, just their approach to things. It's I just find myself going, yeah, no, this is we're gonna have to do things a little bit differently here. I've been going through the board game that WotC came out with, the D&D Adventure Begins,
Yeah.
and we've now worked through all 4 of the included adventures, and then I said, all right, we're done with this one because you guys are way too creative to be bound by a board
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
The approaches that they wanted to take was just
It's
like,
wild.
okay, there's no mechanic in this game for making friends with the fire giant instead of attacking them and stuff. So okay, well, it's time for an actual role-playing game for you.
Mhm.
And but they're not quite ready for all of the crunchy mechanics even of 5th edition. And so we're looking for different systems for them, especially where if you have kids that aren't reading real well yet, or or something like that. There's all those different issues that and you say, okay, well, what do I do? How, what's going to work best for my kid at this point in their lives? And so I also love that you're looking at this from all different age ranges too.
Mhm.
What works for one age is not going to work for another age. So that's really important.
Yeah. And there's like with the age ranges, it's mechanics. Like you said, reading is a big one that comes up because I started playing with my kid when he was about 2.5 years old, and he's 5 now. So like he can't read on his own yet. He's getting there, but like it's gonna take some more practice. So then like finding systems that don't require a lot of reading for him is really important. And that can be a big barrier, but he can play the rest of the game. Like he can roll the dice, he can count the numbers, as long as it's not super crunchy. And the creativity, like you said, it's amazing. And kids play games so different. So a lot of the reviews that I was seeing out there for games that were made for kids, the reviews were written by adults reviewing it as they had played it with their friends. And so it was kind of skewed quite a bit because they weren't actually playing it with the target audience or like the intended like player base. It was being played by adults with adults, reviewed with adults, or like reviewed by adults. And like the kid was missing from the equation. So like you said, it's so different. Because I run D&D games with my friends and like other tabletop RPG games with them. And so we have like the grown-up circle where we play, and it's a little more predictable. They're pretty chaotic. Like I feel like most tabletop RPG parties get there, but my kid is like on a different level, and it was a bit of a challenge at first for me because I was like, what do I do? But it's amazing and it's beautiful, and it is really cool seeing what he comes up with in those games. So
yeah. And for people that that don't quite understand what we're talking about, this I remember back earlier this year when we went through that whole OGL fiasco, and there was this talk about how the folks at Hasbro were making decisions about how Dungeons and Dragons should work, and what the industry should be like, and all this kind of stuff. And it was people that have never played the game, or have maybe kind of checked it out once or something like that, but are not like they don't know what it's like to be a part of to have that game be part of your life, and to just the culture of it, and everything else. Like they know nothing about it, and so trying to make those decisions is for people that it's like non-disabled people that are making all the decisions for how we're going to handle disabilities and accessibility and all that kind of thing. It's like you need people. I mean, in disability community, it's nothing about us without us. All right.
Yeah.
And and so it's the same thing with kids. Like they need to I was I got a little Hot Wheels Batmobile as a prize in a family reunion thing, and
Yeah.
and my daughter was like, "Dad, you can play cars with me now," and I went, "Okay." And so I'm sitting on the floor with my car, and she's got her cars, and and stuff, and the storyline that she's weaving,
Mm-hmm.
it and I'm trying to keep up, and because how like in a dream, like you're
It's like
on the
stream of
airplane, and
consciousness.
then like
Yeah.
you just get on the llama, and then you travel across the marketplace, and it's like there's just sort of no continuity, and
Yeah.
and stuff, and like that's how she plays,
Yeah.
and so I'm trying to sort of piece this together in my mind, and finally it's just like, okay, well, we'll just go with it, and
Yeah.
and and it was like, okay, and this is fun, and so when you're coming with that kind of mentality into a role-playing game, it's going to be different, and
Mm-hmm.
and every kid is different too, because I had another
Yeah.
daughter playing who approaches things a little bit differently, and another one that is and so just the same way that with adults, that you have one who's really into role playing, and then someone else who is really just doesn't like that, struggles with all the kind of social components and things, but just really like rolling dice and whacking monsters, and and,
You're good at
or
strategy,
yeah,
This
yeah, and
that's
so
great. Yeah.
so with adults it's that, with kids it's you're working with completely different skill sets, different things that they're interested in, different life experiences that they bring to the table, and and it's not that their experiences are less, they're just different, they're just informed differently. It's just a different set of experiences that they're bringing, and so it just creates a different experience. And so yeah, you want your game to tailor for that experience, or to be compatible with
Mm-hmm.
that experience set.
Yeah. 100%. Like, because what's dramatic and exciting for us is really different from what's dramatic and exciting for a kid. Like, one of the things that comes up a lot is people will say, well, I tried the game with my kid, I parsed the mechanics down, but like we went to the first session and they just weren't into it. And I was like, okay, how did you start the first session? Well, we met at a restaurant, so we wanted to use a restaurant instead of a tavern. I'm like, okay, what was the setting? Medieval fantasy. I'm like, what kind of shows are your kids watching? Well, they're watching Bluey and Paw Patrol and Octonauts. And I'm like, have they ever seen anything that was medieval fantasy? And like the person paused and they were like, oh. And so like things like breaking down the setting and sort of like challenging a lot of the perceptions that we have about like our initial thoughts on what a tabletop RPG is, because first thing that comes to mind is usually medieval fantasy, maybe a sci-fi tabletop RPG, because there's quite a few of those out there now. But for kids, they might be into something totally different. Superheroes are kind of a big one. There are a few superhero tabletop RPGs out there, but a lot of people are kind of like, well, you can just do superheroes in like this other system. And it does work, but there's a lot of like little bits and pieces of nuance that happen in the background, whether it's like making your setting tailored to kids, the mechanics, the amount of tracking that they have to do, the reading capability, because you don't want to have it where you're like, oh, well, I can just help them with the mechanics and the reading and tracking all their spells and explaining to them what the setting means and all this other stuff, and like the continuity. So like having a whole campaign versus one shots and balancing what you want out of it versus what they want out of it. So there is kind of it can be a little intimidating at first, and there's a bit of a learning curve with like being able to adjust to that, because it is so different, but it's all good. And it's a good learning experience because you understand your children better when you play these games with them. Like you can see how their brain works as you're playing. So And it's a good bonding experience, but it's just, there's a lot that's different when you're playing a tabletop RPG with a kid versus with grown-ups. So
Yeah. And what you're saying about, bonding with your kids and, getting insights into, so often where parents bump up against our kids is just like, we don't understand where they're coming from. It's so easy to say, okay, yeah, but like that's not important, because we're looking at it from a very different perspective than they are. But you know what? The stuff that's important to them is important to them.
Yeah.
And you can't, like, even though you can say, well, but in 10 years it won't matter. Like 10 years is longer than they've been alive. That's like telling us that, in 50 years it won't matter. Like, I don't care about that,
Yeah.
I care about,
right now it's
and the
important.
immediate future, and so, so they'll be more likely to listen to you if they feel like you understand where they're coming from, because adults are the same way. And so this is just, it's a phenomenal way to get to look inside their brains and to see the world through their eyes, and to recognize where they're coming from, because they do express themselves through their play like we all do. And when I create characters, there's always a little piece of me in that character. My heroes, my villains, everybody, they've all got a little piece of me in them. And so being able, and kids even more so, you're going to see that. And so you'll find that it's just such a unique opportunity, and to understand them better, to know where they're coming from, to recognize what's important, why it's important to them. I mean, all that stuff. And then, as they grow up, and you continue, that lifelong relationship that is parenting, or grandparenting, or whatever your relationship is with those kids. Just you're building those memories, you're building, and something that I've just really become aware of is that sometimes, we talk about making memories with kids. It's not that they're necessarily going to remember all those details, because I don't remember most, the vast majority of the details of my life before about, middle elementary or so. But you're leaving that emotional impression. Like it's been said that the line is like, people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
And so you're building that feeling of, this is somebody that understands me, that cares about me, that cares about how I feel, that cares about what I'm going through, so that when they're older and dealing with all the things that go along with being, adolescents, preteen, teens, young adults, all that, and you've already developed and had this constant, ongoing communication about what's going on with them, in it, framed in a game, oftentimes. That it's like you've got something to talk about. I know even my adult kids, when we connect, a lot of times the sort of framework of our conversation revolves around role-playing games and things like that, because it's something that we're interested in. And but then that'll bring up other things. Oh yeah, well, that reminds me this other thing that happened, or whatever. And it just it keeps that communication line open. And it's so powerful. So have you heard stories from people that use your content?
Yes, there's quite a few that have been kind of trickling in, especially the past year, because a lot of people who maybe I connected with in the very beginning have become a little more established, or have had the time to really get into it, and it's pretty awesome. So there's a family who won a giveaway where they got a whole bunch of my games. They sent me a picture of like them playing with the kids, and they're all like around the table, like smiling and having fun. And I was like, there's teachers who have used there's the Story Guider game. It's a 30-week pre-K social emotional learning curriculum where there's a different game or like story that goes with it each week. That's all like into like the kind of the TTRPG space. And they've used it with their kids and have like such amazing stories that come from that. There's creators who have said that like they continued making games and improving them and like learning how to make tabletop RPGs for kids from my site, and then showing me the work that they've made like a couple years later. And it's a pretty amazing feeling. So I'm still kind of like, whenever it like comes up, I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. It's like it's I don't know, it's pretty amazing. So yeah.
There's so many times where you're going to have an impact on someone. I mean, of course, there's all the times that you never hear about. All right.
Yeah.
But especially when you're making this kind of impact on kids. All right. You're the like okay, so you provide a resource for a teacher. All right. The teacher uses that to connect with their kids. All right.
24
with their students.
Yeah.
All right. So you got all those students. All right. And man, those relationships with their teachers are so important. And because I mean, sometimes some of those kids have bad setting, things that are not great at home. But school's a safe space, and when they've got a teacher there that's going to be there for them, that they can connect with, it can change the trajectory of a kid's life. And so they're impacting all those kids, and then those kids are taking that that effect on them, and they're taking it into their social circles, into their families, into their and as they grow up, they're passing it on to their kids, and
it just kind of grows and grows and grows. And then like the creators that are on the site, and I see like how many people are finding their games through TTRPG Kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I did like a back of the napkin kind of calculation one time because I was like curious, and I was like, I was kind of blown away. I'm still like a little in shock about how big it's gotten. When I started, I was like, I'm gonna write this and like create some resources and hopefully help some people, and it just kind of, I think it filled a need that people really actually wanted and have wanted to pursue. And I'm like really glad that it's helping, but I'm also still kind of a bit shocked and amazed by it, like how many people have gotten into it. So yeah,
I get that. I mean, well, if you think about tabletop games have been around since the late 70s, early 80s, but it really, things really took off with when 5th edition came out 10 years ago. And but you have people that grew up with games like I did, and wanted to pass it on to our kids. And honestly, I'm so embarrassed about this as a parent that I have 6 kids, and the 3 oldest ones are all adults, and I did not play role-playing games with any of them.
Don't be embarrassed. There was don't be embarrassed. Like, it's all good.
They love them now,
right?
But they learned it without me.
Yeah, but you don't think about it sometimes.
Well, I thought about it so much, but it was always like, I'm busy.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is, there wasn't a resource like TTRPG Kids where where I could find stuff that would specifically, I always felt like, okay, I needed to like sit down because, at the time I had like 1st and 2nd edition, which was all just like really, you needed tables for everything. It was Thaco.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah.
All right. And so it's like, oh, this is too complicated. It's gonna take me forever. Like I want to just be able to sit down with you guys and play one of these games and show you what it's about and stuff. But it was always just the sort of barrier for entry was so big that I just never had that huge chunk of time to be able to put something together that I felt really good about, and so it just never happened.
Yeah.
And so but now that I'm doing this stuff full time, that helps. And but even then I'm busy with stuff, but now my kids that I have at home, they're like, Dad, when can we play Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
And for them right now, that means the board game. All right. But
Right, yeah.
We just started developing characters for them, and just even their ideas for characters are just fascinating and stuff.
That's a game of itself. Like
yeah. So but yeah, looking at rules light systems and stuff like that, so they can do that, and so they can express that creativity. And the other thing that I want to mention with this, when we talk about creativity, I took one education class during my undergrad, and that was on creativity, and they talked about how creativity is measured by age, and that your sort of creative age is the lower it is, the more creative you are. Yeah. Because as kids grow up, they're told they have all these ideas, and people keep telling them, no, that doesn't work. You can't do that. And what it does is it stifles creativity, and because then they just immediately dismiss a lot of the ideas that they have as, no, that wouldn't work. Or that's just ridiculous or whatever. And then it stops them from going, well, okay, but what if we took this really bizarre idea and then, tweaked it? Yeah. But when they're told, no, that doesn't work and stuff all the time, they just don't get to that point. And so by the time we get to adults, we've already just discarded a whole bunch of really great ideas. And so being able to tap into that imagination again the kids have, that they still have, and being able to encourage that so that they don't lose it. And I mean, there's still, it's inevitable they're going to lose some, but the more you can help them retain and encourage them and say, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, tabletop RPGs are like a safe place to allow that creativity to just go wild. Yep. There's a frame still with the game, so that way there's like some rules that you maybe need to like get creative to work around, but that's more the focus. It's not so much about saying no, it's saying here is a problem, and there's also some randomization that can mess with you. How do you plan for that? How do you mitigate your risk? Is kind of like built into that. So it's taking that creativity and then encouraging it, and then also giving it like a tiny bit of a direction so it can help them later and build up like problem solving skills. So the class that I teach, it's a engineering freshman class where we do a lot of projects and everything, and we build up like a lot of like engineering soft skills. And one of those is we go through the engineering problem solving process. And I've done an article actually about how the engineering problem solving process lines up pretty exactly with like raiding a dragon's lair, because like all the steps are there. And so it gets you practicing like implementing a plan. Like you get creative. There's the brainstorming phase and kids go wild with it. And then you're like, okay, now which idea do you want to use? And so then they've got to like think about all the creativity that they've just exploded everywhere and pick it and like apply other like aspects of their learning to that. And it's really cool seeing that happen, because it shows that creativity is a very good thing and that it can be used as a tool for themselves. And so you're not saying no, you're saying, I have all of these options. They're all good. Which good option do I want to take? Which I think is something that's really, really important for growing up and being a healthy adult. another cool thing, and if I'm going on too many tangents, like let me
Nope.
know.
No, by all
Um,
means. I have ADHD, so like
yeah, I'm
tangents
like
are
all over
my
the place.
thing.
So,
So by all means.
one really cool thing that these help with too is you are an adult playing a tabletop RPG with a kid. The kid has all this creativity inside of them and they're letting it out in the game. And as the adult, you are playing with them and showing your creativity and showing that it's okay for adults to have fun too. So they grow up seeing that instead of seeing adults going to work, coming home, being tired, and going through this cycle of day to day to day to day. So like it's good for adults to like for themselves to have that time to play and have some way that they're comfortable connecting with their children. But then also that gives so much to kids to have adults modeling that behavior for them of being able to enjoy life as an adult and letting them participate into that. And I think that's one of the really big impacts that happens too, that a lot of the educational studies and like it doesn't get into that so much. And that's actually one of the like really big things that I think has been like my takeaway through this, and that I want my kid to see is that it's okay to have fun when you grow up, and it's okay to be yourself, and it's okay to be creative and have that space for you later in life. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it seems like that's getting better than it was, decades ago, where, video games are they used to be seen as a kid's thing, and people that grew up with video games like, no, I kind of still like them, and they still sometimes have a stigma, and yet it's there's more money in video games than there are in movies. It's a huge industry, and so tabletop games even more so is just the ability to be creative and just sort of anything goes and stuff like that, to encourage that. I mean, kids are always thinking about, it's always that question, everybody, what do you want to be when you grow up and stuff. And my kid, one of my daughters especially, she's constantly asking me like, Dad, like what's it like to be grown up, and what I don't know what I'm gonna be and stuff like that. And I said, okay, so here's the thing. You are 12 and you don't need to worry about your career trajectory at this point. And but also I can tell you what you're going to be. You are going to be just a wonderful, compassionate, caring, loving person, because that's who you are now, and I don't expect that will ever change about you. And she's like, well, yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about. Like, but that's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and that's one of the like big things with this too, is like that is the core of like what we want to instill in our kids, is making sure that they themselves are set up so that whatever they want to do, they have the capability to do that and to jump into something else. And I've actually seen with my kid, like, because he's had questions about like, what he wants to be as a grown up. And he's like, I want to be an engineer. And was telling everyone he wanted to be an engineer. He's talking about driving a train when they were thinking that like, it's talking about like car engineer or something like that. And like, it's all, and so we had like a little talk about it, like, he was like, well, I want to be this when I grow up. I'm like, you can definitely drive a train when you grow up. That's okay. And he will sometimes like try out like career paths almost in the games. Like he's like, okay, today I want to be an astronaut. And I'm like, cool, we're gonna play a game about being an astronaut. And 3-4 sessions later, after we've done the astronaut a while, he's like, I don't think I want to be an astronaut. We're gonna build a time machine. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're gonna build a time machine. We'll try that out. We'll do some sciencey stuff. And he's like, I don't think I want to do science. So it goes through this process of like he gets to try on all these different shoes and have like these little mini experiences of like, because I'll put in stuff where it's like, okay, a scientist would need to do these 3 things probably in order to get to the like this next step. How do you want to handle these? And so he gets to still see like some elements of what that would be like, or like getting that different perspective, and then he can make a decision for himself. So it's just like giving so much information you can build into it. And it's such an awesome tool. Like TTRPGs are kind of like my parent cheat code at this point. Like anything that we're kind of struggling with or need help explaining, we've baked it into a TTRPG and have used it to sort of help out with that. So
yeah. I just I just love that. With just communicating with your kids. And you want to know what's going on with them. You want to like you can't figure out how to talk to them, because your lives are so different or something like that. It's such a I struggle in social situations anyway, and so being able to RPGs provide a framework.
Yep. 100%.
It provides a setting. Like I can sit down like an interview like this where we have something specific that we're talking about. Like I'm good to go, and I love that. But you just put me like at a party or some other thing where there's just kind of small talk and stuff like that. Or for that matter, when my kids come home from school and say, "How was school today?"
Yeah.
And trying to have a conversation where they're just kind of like, it was fine, nothing new or whatever, and stuff. It's hard to go, okay, I'm not sure where to go here to find out sort of what's in your head right now, but yeah, to be able to sit down and sit down and play a game together, that provides that framework for that interaction. So yeah, it's just huge.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And so it just like having that some kind of context or like a consistent point to sort of like ground the conversation and the interaction a little bit helps me be more comfortable. I think it helps him be more comfortable because I'm more comfortable. Like there's a whole like feedback loop about it. It's pretty awesome. So
yeah, I mean, you see that it's a trope in TV shows with parents trying to talk to their kids and trying to be cool or and whatever, and it's like, yeah, just sit down and roll some dice together, and that'll take care of that.
And the gossip ends up coming out.
Yeah,
at some point during that, like, yeah.
All right. So you just rescued a genie from the hands of an Ifriti, and it offers you 3 wishes to achieve your goals to make the world better. What do you wish for?
Oh my goodness. 3 wishes to make the world better. That's a tough one. I mean, there's like obvious ones like end world hunger and stuff like that. Let me think. I would say this is a hard one. I would say providing affordable or free healthcare for everyone is maybe like, that's a big one. Ending all wars, that'd be a good one. And then the rest, I would frame it as resource management for the world, because that includes like food, water, medical supplies, everything like that. I think that would like basic needs maybe is kind of like where I'd go with that. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, or, you can. It's like an RPG. Okay. You can answer it any way you want.
Oh gosh, that was a hard one.
And it's okay because like I don't actually have a genie for you.
Right, I know.
And so you don't have to worry about the monkey's paw effect. And
exactly. That's what I'm like.
And you don't
trying to think like, how it could go wrong while I'm answering.
Yeah. And you can change your mind.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not like, oh, I used up my wishes and now my life is over.
Yeah.
All right. So what one message would you like to give to gamers with kids?
Try playing tabletop RPGs with them. Just try it. Pick something as simple as you possibly can and give it a shot and see if it works. And if it doesn't, look at what didn't work and change that one thing and try again. So that's kind of like the, so maybe like, try it out initially. Don't get stuck in decision paralysis, because so many people will kind of like get in that loop of like, there's a few teachers I've talked to that have been planning to use tabletop RPGs in the classroom for like 10 years, but then never were able to like finish the plan. But if you just pick something like really rules light, low barriers, something that's like a 1-page system, and try it out to get a feel for it and see if it's even something that you want to continue, do that. It can take 1 hour of prep versus like, weeks and weeks of planning. Do something small and see if people are into it, and then iterate, like get that down. And that can really help. So, but just trying it and doing it and getting a feel for it and seeing what it's like, getting past that like entry barrier is the biggest thing for most people. So give it a shot, and I think you'll have fun with it. So, yeah.
Okay, and then what message would you like to give to gamers without kids?
Gamers without kids, be open to having people at your table who maybe aren't in your normal circle. So if like a person at your table, their kid is getting a little bit older and they maybe want to join, give it a shot and see what you can do for your game. If you've got a friend who is interested in joining and they haven't been at your TTRPG table before, try them out on a one-shot. Like, that's how the hobby grows and how we connect with people and get more people interested. I ran a try out your first tabletop RPG campaign, and like I've started running them at a community center near me, and just having one person to say, hey, would you like to play a game? And then showing you the rules, that means so much to them. And now they're all starting their own groups, running their own games. And it's just kind of like, my one experience kind of went, and it grows and grows and grows. So being open to introducing others to the game at any age, from all walks of life, is really important. It means so much to them. You have so much impact, and it's giving such a gift to the world, because like we talked about earlier, you impact one person, they impact or you impact two people, they impact two people, they impact two people. Like, it expands really fast, and it has the potential to help a lot of people from just one or two interactions.
Yeah. All right. So what projects are you working on now that you can talk about?
I am, oh gosh. So I'm always writing articles. I'm posting at this point, I think about 3 per week. So I've got like 300, I got more than 300 articles on the site as it is, and it's continuing to grow. So I've got like some fun stuff for October. I'm like featuring all of the spooky games that I've posted about previously. And then there's like some new ones being thrown in there. I've got some new games that just came out that are like, they're spooky themed. So there's Whispers, which is about who the ghosts call for help. So it's kind of like you play as a Danny Phantom kind of character who collects wisp, which is like ghost energy, in order to help ghosts with their problems, like finding a lost family heirloom or like saving a house from being torn down or something. And then there's like a spooky train one. So I've been having fun with those. There's more games on the docket, but I've got to pick which one I'm doing next. So probably taking a break for a couple months after getting those 2 out, and then I'm looking at getting another one in December coming up. Oh gosh, I'm on Tattered Bear. So Tattered Bear helps independent publishers get their projects on through crowdfunding. And so we help like a lot of, especially small indie publishers, maybe get their first crowdfunding campaign going and things like that. So I can talk about that one. Not about any of our future clients yet. We got to announce those, but we have like some really fun ones that are coming up that I'm excited about. And working on segments for Ludology podcasts. I've got like a monthly spot on there and a few other things. So I'll be going to UConn, which is a local convention in Michigan, in November, and then also to Motor City Comic Con And then that's also in November. And then in December, I'll be giving a talk or panel kind of presentation at PAX Unplugged. So those are a few other things that are kind of coming up. So
awesome.
Busy.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah.
All right, so we will have all your contact information in our show notes, but where is the one best place that you'd like people to start to learn more about you or to contact you?
TTRPGKids.com. So it's all one word. It's kids with an S at the end, not a Z. So it's TTRPGKids.com. And I've got everything on the site there. So, yeah.
All right. Well, Steph, thank you so much for coming on the show. Everyone check out the links in the show notes.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was good chatting.
So appreciate Steph coming on the show. Had a really great time, and I hope that those of you who are watching and listening did too. Now, huge thanks to all of our patrons who support us through our Patreon. Big shout out for our new patron that I appreciate so much. Big thanks to Of Earth and Iron for your support. Your ongoing support from all of you gives us the encouragement to keep up this work. And thanks to our patrons, every month we add community copies to our store for those who can't afford our products. So if that's you, you can sign up for those weekly emails to the Dragon's Hoard to get notified when they come available. In fact, we have a whole bunch of them that are there right now that you can go and get whatever you need that you can't afford. Patrons get access to all of our content in a modular format that we call the Lair, plus exclusive extras, including all these weekly adventures for only $3 a month. Higher tiers have all kinds of added benefits, and so you can check out the link in our show notes for more details. If you see this show being helpful, hit that like button if you're watching this on YouTube. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe. If you know people that need to hear this, please pass it on to them. And if you, like me, think everyone needs to hear this, pass it on to your social media friends and your social circles. And don't forget those podcast ratings. They're super, super important. Thank you so much for joining us to make lives better with tabletop role-playing games. To close this out, I would love to hear about your experience playing TTRPGs with kids. Leave a comment on YouTube or send me an email.